Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Concern is growing about the impact of government funding on schools in England, with teachers and now even some Conservative MPs urging a rethink. The Education Policy Institute, a think tank, is warning that secondary schools could see their funding drop by nearly £300,000 on average by 2020. But the government, which is changing the way it funds schools, insists it's spending more than ever, some £40 billion. So who's right? Our education editor, Branwen Jeffries, has spent the day at a school in Manchester.
Are you all right? OK.
In 20 years as an inner-city head, Ian Fenn has seen it all.
What are you doing? Shad, don't do that.
Shootings, stabbings, drugs, deprivation and disability.
Did you go?
Almost half his pupils have learning difficulties. He says he needs every penny, but funding isn't keeping up with the needs of his school.
3/4 of the children coming into the school can't read properly. They'll be 2, 3, 4, 5 years behind where they should be. On top of that, the similar number have English as an additional language. We have a large number of children with special educational needs, so they will have perhaps speech and language problems. I mean, the list is endless.
What is the lowest prime number that goes into 240? Brilliant.
It's not just teachers, but extra teaching assistants. The school employs social workers too. Financial pressures mean jobs at risk.
Let's begin with 2.
A new funding formula will share out money differently. It will give some areas a bigger slice, while others get a smaller share. London loses most. School budgets are already under pressure, despite a record £40 billion pot. Pensions, national insurance and pay are rising. So are pupil numbers. It could add up to a 6 to 11% real terms cut per pupil.
How am I going to care for the most vulnerable in our society if they take the money away from me? I don't have enough now. I have kids who are under-resourced at the moment, and yet they're going to give me substantially less.
But tonight, another warning from a senior Tory, adding to the pressure on ministers. The mainly Conservative counties have elections in May. Some hoped for a better deal from the new formula.
One secondary school will be getting £2 million less than another secondary school of similar size, accepting that one is in an area of high deprivation and one is in more of a leafy lane location. But that £2 million differential between one secondary school with the same pupil numbers, the need may be slightly different in one, cannot amount to £2 million.
So could the funding formula become the government's next U-turn? Well, there's certainly a lot of pressure from the Tory grassroots and backbenchers, but they're the ones that also really want a new deal for their areas. And there's another problem too. If you give more money to the counties and shires, it means taking even more from inner-city schools like this. Schools in England have had 20 years of funding increases, but as cost pressures rise, no one feels like a winner. Branwen Jeffries, BBC News, Manchester.
There will be no winners, even if a planned national funding formula for schools goes ahead, according to new research. It claims that every school in England will see budget cuts in real terms. Even Tory MPs are getting angry, as Jane Death reports.
There are 2 banks, and you want to know where are you going to be better off putting your money?
Year 9 getting down to brass tacks at Tambridge House School in Horsham. Their head teacher, Jules White, is struggling with his own sums. These are the cuts he's already made, worth £250,000. His is one of the just about managing schools which would get more money under a new funding formula. But he says increased costs like pay, pensions and national insurance means he'll still be broke.
If this new funding formula is not radically altered to take account of the needs of schools like ours, then we'll go under.
Under this new funding formula, as planned, you'll get an extra 3%, so won't that cover the shortfall?
The 3% to my school represents about £180,000. It wouldn't be quite enough, but it would make a difference. But at the same time, schools like mine and all across the country are hit by these huge unfunded costs. So we've worked those through using DFE figures, and the cost comes to £220,000. So I'm actually going to be £40,000 worse off when the new funding formula comes in. I didn't think that I could get any poorer, but we are.
And the Education Policy Institute says a new funding formula is academic, since all schools will find themselves in the red. It says all schools will see a real terms cut in per pupil funding over the next 3 years, even those that benefit from more government money. Around half will see large cuts of between 6 and 11%. Primary schools will lose an average of £74,000, equivalent to losing 2 teachers. Secondaries will lose an average of £291,000, or 6 teachers.
Some of the schools with the most disadvantaged pupils actually may receive less funding in relative terms here. There is some evidence here that the government is moving some resources to the just about managing category away from the most deprived schools.
Critics say the Education Secretary is swapping one unfair funding system for another.
Well, we're making sure that schools are funded consistently so that all of our children get the same amount of investment wherever they're growing up in the country.
But the government faces a revolt by unruly Tories who say their local schools would be shortchanged.
Angry Tory MPs have warned Theresa May that they would make sure that the funding changes in their proposed form don't get past the House of Commons vote. Publicly, the Department for Education is dismissing any notion of a U-turn. But privately, I understand the word modification has been used.
The government says school spending is at a record high, but it is listening to concerns about the funding formula. It's under pressure to do its sums again.